When I hear younger generations talk about their toys, I think, man, if I had Halo this or Dragons that when I was a kid, I probably never would have left the house. The graphics are amazing. They're so immersive, I can see how it would be difficult to tear oneself away. And the people who make these games, the writers, the artists, the developers, they're really creative. Many of the toys that I had when I was a kid were also made by really creative people, but they were different. They were Nazi rocket scientists. That's right, the boys from Peenemünde made many of our toys. They were the rocket scientists who created the V-1 and V-2 rockets that rained down on England during World War II. These scientists were brought here after the war in a program called Operation Paperclip, where they continued their work in White Sands, New Mexico. But when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik in the 50s, the Cold War heated up big time. Well, we all know what happened after that. But in the 50s, many of our Nazi rocket scientists were getting older, and as they retired, they went to work for big American toy companies. So with the combination of the space race and our Nazi rocket scientists, things changed dramatically under the Christmas tree. Old West cap guns were soon replaced by new Frontier missile launchers. As for the girls, they were expected to keep the home fires burning with Barbie dolls and Susie Homemaker ovens, while the boys went off to fight the commies in their Steve Canyon fighter cockpits wearing their Steve Canyon helmets. And speaking of helmets, these days they're more popular than ever, and they're not gender specific. We've come a long way, baby. And since the 50s also saw the first great wave of science fiction movies, moon bases and monsters soon appeared on Santa's list, when he wasn't too busy swilling down a Coke, that is. I remember one Christmas where my great Garloo monster duked it out with my brother Eddie's Robot Commando, and I had to admit that the Robot Commando won. He was more versatile. He had rockets coming out of his head, while the great Garloo just walked around in a loincloth and made funny noises. It was kind of like if Johnny Weissmuller had hooked up with the creature from the Black Lagoon and had a son. And when it came to board games, Parker Brothers ruled, with Monopoly and Sorry. We played those games for years. We had Etch-a-Sketch, which was okay, but Silly Putty was kind of lame. You'd press it down on a comic book panel to make a copy, but then what? Slinkies you could roll downstairs, but hey, I could do that on my own. Hula hoops were for girls, erector sets were for boys who dreamt about becoming civil engineers. Mr. Machine, well, we're still trying to figure that one out. Lincoln Logs were fun as they evoked early Americana, but they were soon outdone by Legos, which were great until you stepped on one with your bare feet. Lionel trains were a rite of passage, and once a year Dad would set them up, but he never let us play with them because they ran on electricity. Models were fun to build. Many of them were tanks and planes, and after a while we'd take them outside and burn them. We did the same with the little green soldiers, the little green soldiers that everyone had, because war is hell. Aurora came out with a line of monster models. Frankenstein, Dracula, Godzilla, King Kong, and they were cool, so we never burnt them. Well, except for Frankenstein, but he was used to that. In truth, as bright and as flashy as many of our toys were, they were quickly forgotten. Except there were three toys that I remember really well because they became a big part of my young boomer life. The first was knock hockey, which was sort of a precursor to air hockey. Next, for those of us who had snow in the winter, an American Flyer sled was just the greatest. You'd spend hours throwing yourself down on the sled and racing down the biggest hill you could find, and then spend hours climbing back up that same hill for just one more ride. Always just one more ride. And then we'd hear our mom calling us from down the street. Come on, you two, it's getting dark, time to come home. But for me, the greatest toy was my bicycle. I had a 3-speed English Raleigh and I rode it everywhere. It was my first taste of independence, of being on my own. In summer months, I'd ride my bike past Fort Totten and along the Little Neck shoreline until I hit the Bayside Marina. And then I'd walk my bike down that long pier and I'd buy a can of 7 Up. And in those days, you had to use a church key to punch 2 holes in the can. Anyway, I'd stand by the railing, sipping my 7 Up and watching the boats go by. And then I'd ride all the way home. Summertime. See you around the campus.